No man has touched me in months, the giant Apache women said, shy farmer. The sun had just begun to rise over the rolling hills, spilling warm golden light across the small, quiet village that lay tucked between rugged cliffs and dense forests. In the early hours, the air smelled of damp soil, fresh grass, and the faint smoke of wood fires from the few houses scattered across the valley. The village was small, home to families who had lived there for generations, and it moved at a slow, deliberate pace, like the river that cut through the land. Among the villagers there was one man who was quieter than most, a man whose presence could be missed if one did not pay close attention. His name was Elias, and he was a farmer. Elias was a man of simple routines. He woke before the sun fully broke over the hills, shaking off the cool night air from his sleep. His house was small but sturdy, built of clay and wood, with a roof patched in places where the storms of past seasons had tested its strength. Inside, the rooms were simple and practical. A small table, a few chairs, shelves lined with jars of herbs and grains, and a bed that looked as though it had been made by careful hands long ago. It was not a house for a man of wealth or power, but it was enough for Elias. Enough for his quiet life, his solitary work, and the occasional company of a neighbor or friend passing by. The mornings were his favorite. There was a rhythm in the work of the fields that gave him comfort. He would stretch his arms, take a deep breath of the cool morning air, and step outside. The dew still clung to the blades of grass, sparkling like tiny diamonds in the soft sunlight. The birds were beginning to sing, their songs threading through the air like gentle music. Elias loved these moments of stillness before the village awoke fully, when the world seemed untouched and pure. Desperate, he walked to his fields, a small expanse of land where he grew corn, beans, and a few vegetables for his own use and for trade at the village market. The soil was rich, dark, and easy to work, though it demanded attention and patience. Elias knew each patch of land as one knows a close friend. He could tell without a word which rows needed more water, which seeds had struggled to grow, and which plants were ready to be harvested. He worked with steady hands, planting, watering, and tending to the crops, finding in the labor a sense of purpose and quiet satisfaction. Despite the simplicity of his life, Elias often felt the weight of loneliness. He was not an unpleasant man. His neighbors respected him, and children would sometimes run to him for stories or advice, but he carried a shyness that kept him from forming close bonds beyond polite greetings. He often wondered why he could not be like others, who spoke freely with strangers, laughed openly with friends, or courted the women of the village with confidence. Perhaps it was the years of solitary work that had shaped him, or perhaps it was simply the way he had been made. Whatever the reason, he lived in his quiet world, observing life more than participating in it. On one particular morning, as Elias walked to the far edge of his fields to check on the newly planted corn, he noticed a figure moving at the edge of the village market. The woman stood out immediately. She was tall, taller than anyone Elias had ever seen, with broad shoulders and strong arms that suggested a life of hard work. Her presence was striking, commanding even, yet there was a softness in her eyes, a warmth that seemed almost out of place given her size. She moved gracefully, despite her height, and there was a calm confidence in her steps. She carried herself with a quiet dignity that drew Elias's attention like a magnet. He paused, leaning on the wooden fence that bordered his field, pretending to check the soil while secretly watching her. The villagers around her seemed to treat her with a mixture of admiration and cautious respect. She exchanged greetings with a few people, laughed softly at a joke someone made, and moved on with a purpose. Elias could not take his eyes off her. There was something about her presence that both intrigued and unsettled him. He had never seen anyone like her before, and yet there was a familiarity in the way she seemed to belong, as though the land itself recognized her strength and welcomed it. Days passed, and Elias found himself noticing her more often. She moved through the village with ease, performing tasks, speaking with neighbors and tending to her own affairs. But some villagers whispered about her in hushed tones, perhaps commenting on her size, her strength, or the way she carried herself. Elias, however, did not see her in those terms. He saw a person, complex and real, someone who moved through the world with courage and quiet resilience. And with each passing day, his curiosity grew, mingled with a shy admiration he could not explain. It was during one of his routine trips to the forest that he first encountered her up close. He had risen early, as usual, to collect herbs and firewood. Bright. The forest was dense, with shafts of sunlight piercing through the thick canopy, creating patterns on the forest floor. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, and the quiet hum of insects filled the spaces between bird calls. Elias moved carefully along a narrow path, mindful of the uneven ground, when he heard the faint rustle of leaves ahead. At first he thought it was an animal, perhaps a deer moving through the underbrush, but as he approached, he realized it was the woman. She was bending to pick herbs, her movements precise and practiced. She looked up, startled for a moment, and then smiled warmly when she recognized him. There was no hint of fear or suspicion in her gaze, only a calm acknowledgement of his presence. Elias felt his chest tighten, a mix of nervousness and curiosity. He had never spoken with her before, and now here she was, so close, so real. Despair. He cleared his throat and offered a hesitant greeting.
"Good morning," he said softly.
Beth. She nodded, returning the greeting with a gentle, "Good morning." There was a pause, filled with the sounds of the forest, the rustle of leaves, and the distant call of a bird. Then, unexpectedly, she spoke with a vulnerability that caught him off guard. "No man has touched me in months," she said, her voice quiet, almost shy. There was no accusation, no bitterness, only honesty, as if she were sharing a simple truth of her life. Elias froze, unsure how to respond. The words seemed to hang in the air, heavy with meaning, and yet simple in their raw humanity. He realized in that moment that beneath her strong exterior she carried loneliness, just as he did. They spoke for a few more minutes, exchanging simple words about the forest, the herbs, and the work of the day. Elias discovered that she had a life full of responsibility and expectations, that she was respected but often isolated, that her strength set her apart in ways that were both admired and misunderstood. He listened, fascinated and empathetic, finding a connection in their shared experience of solitude. As he walked back to his fields that morning, Elias felt a strange mix of emotions. He was nervous, yes, and uncertain of what the future might hold, but he also felt a spark of hope. The world, vast and sometimes lonely, had given him a glimpse of another human soul who understood what it was like to carry quiet burdens. For the first time in months, perhaps years, he felt a sense of anticipation, a curiosity about what might come next. And so, the quiet rhythm of his days continued. But now there was a new awareness in his heart. The fields, the forests, and the simple village life remained as before. But somewhere in the distance, the presence of the tall Apache woman had changed something inside him. He did not yet know how, or when, or even why. But he felt the beginning of a story that was larger than himself, a story of connection, courage, and perhaps, in time, companionship. The days following their first meeting in the forest passed in a quiet, almost magical way for Elias. Each morning as he stepped into his fields, he found his thoughts wandering to the tall Apache woman. Her presence lingered in his mind, like a soft melody he could not forget. He began to notice small details about the village that he had never paid attention to before. The way the sunlight hit the market stalls, the way the wind moved through the trees, and the faint laughter of children playing near the riverbank. Everything seemed sharper, brighter, as if her presence had opened his eyes to a world he had lived in but never truly seen. It was on a cool, breezy morning that Elias saw her again. She was near the edge of the village, gathering wild flowers that grew along the narrow path leading to the hills. The sunlight caught her hair, making it shine like threads of dark gold. She moved with purpose but also with care, bending to pick a flower, then rising to admire it before placing it gently into the basket she carried. Elias approached slowly, unsure whether he should speak or simply watch from a distance. His heart beat faster than usual, a mixture of nervousness and excitement he could not control. She looked up as he came closer, and a smile spread across her face. This time it was warmer, more inviting. It was not the cautious acknowledgement of the first meeting, but a friendly gesture, a sign that she remembered him and did not mind his presence. "Good morning, Elias," she said, her voice carrying the quiet confidence that made her so remarkable. "I didn't expect to see you here today." "Good morning," he replied softly, fumbling with his words. I was just collecting herbs. I did not mean to disturb you." She laughed lightly, a sound like wind chimes dancing in the morning breeze.
You are not disturbing me, she said.
Pute. I am glad you came.
There was a pause, and then she spoke again, her voice quieter this time, almost shy. I like having someone to talk to, someone who listens.
He had spent much of his life listening to others, but had rarely experienced the feeling of someone truly wanting to share their thoughts with him. It was not just her words that moved him. It was the honesty behind them, the willingness to be vulnerable in front of a man she had only recently met.
He nodded, unsure how to respond, feeling the weight of her openness.
They began to walk together along the narrow path that led into the hills. She pointed out herbs and flowers, explaining their uses, their qualities, and their significance to the village. Elias listened intently, asking questions when he could, though his shyness often made his voice quiet and hesitant. She did not seem to mind, answering patiently and occasionally teasing him gently for his quiet nature. As they walked, she spoke of her life in the village. She told him of the responsibilities she carried, the tasks that required her strength and endurance, and the times when she felt isolated because she did not fit the expectations of others. She spoke with honesty, without bitterness, describing the loneliness she sometimes felt despite being respected by her neighbors. "It can be hard," she admitted, "being different from everyone else. People admire my strength, but they do not always understand me."
Elias felt a deep empathy for her. He understood, in his own way, the feeling of being apart, of being quiet when others were loud, reserved when others were outgoing.
For the first time, he realized that his own loneliness was mirrored in another person, and that shared experience created a bond he had never felt before. She paused near a small stream that trickled down the hillside, the water clear and cold. She knelt and cupped her hands to drink, then offered him a small smile. "Would you like some?" she asked. He shook his head, smiling shyly, not trusting his voice to speak the words he wanted to say. They continued walking, and their conversation grew more personal. She spoke of her dreams, the small hopes she carried in her heart, and the things she wished she could change about her life. Elias listened quietly, sometimes offering his own thoughts. Though they were few and careful, he was learning, slowly, how to express himself around her, how to share pieces of his own story without fear of judgment. At one point she looked at him directly, her eyes softening. Breath. "You know," she said, "sometimes I feel like no one really sees me. People notice my size, my strength, but they do not see the person inside."
I do not expect anyone to understand, but I like it when someone tries.
Her words were simple, but the emotion behind them was profound. Elias felt a lump in his throat. He wanted to tell her that he understood, that he cared, but the words seemed to stick in his throat. Instead, he nodded, hoping she could feel his sincerity. For the next few hours they wandered through the hills, gathering herbs and talking quietly. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them, their steps in rhythm, their words carrying weight and meaning. The shy farmer felt something awakening inside him, a courage he had never known, a curiosity about life and connection that he could not ignore. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, they began to make their way back toward the village. The forest gradually opened into fields, and the sounds of village life drifted toward them. Children laughed as they ran past, women called to one another from the market stalls, and the smell of fresh bread and roasting meat filled the air. Yet even in the midst of the bustling village, Elias felt a calmness he had not known before. He realized that her presence had changed something in him, had made the world feel less lonely, more alive. Before they parted ways, she turned to him with a small, playful smile. "Will I see you again?" she asked. Elias hesitated, then nodded. "Yes," he said softly, feeling a courage he had not felt in years. I would like that." Her smile widened, and she nodded in approval. "Good," she said. "I like talking with you. You listen in a way that is rare, but—" He walked back to his fields, his mind buzzing with thoughts. Every detail of the encounter replayed in his head. Her laughter, the way she looked at him, the honesty in her words. He felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of excitement and nervousness. For the first time, he began to imagine a life that was not only about tending fields and surviving, but also about sharing experiences, emotions, and moments with someone else. Over the next few days, Elias found himself taking longer walks through the village and the surrounding hills, hoping to see her again. Sometimes he did, sometimes he did not, but each encounter, each smile, each shared word strengthened the connection between them. He began to notice the subtle ways she observed the world, how she found beauty in simple things, how her laughter could make even the quietest moment feel alive. One afternoon, as he was repairing a fence in his field, she appeared at the edge of the property, bed. She had a basket of freshly picked herbs in her hands, and a soft smile on her face.
"I thought I would help," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "It is easier with two people." Elias hesitated, then nodded.
"Thank you," he said. Together they worked in comfortable silence, their movements synchronized in a way that felt natural and effortless. Occasionally she would speak, asking questions or making observations, and he would respond, slowly growing more confident in his words. By the end of the afternoon, the fence was repaired, the fields tidied, and both of them were smiling, exhausted, but satisfied.
As they parted that day, she placed a hand lightly on his shoulder. "I enjoy spending time with you," she said simply.
You are different. In a good way.
Elias felt a rush of warmth and gratitude, words failing him once again. He nodded, hoping she understood.
That night, as he sat alone in his small house, Elias reflected on the day. He realized that something inside him had shifted. His shyness was still there, but it was no longer a wall keeping him apart from the world. The connection he felt with her, however brief, had opened a door to something new. A friendship, perhaps, or something more. He did not yet know, but he understood that life could be richer, fuller, and more meaningful than he had ever imagined. And so, the quiet rhythm of his days continued, but with a new sense of anticipation. The tall Apache woman had entered his life like a sudden breeze, stirring emotions and thoughts he had long buried. He did not yet know where this connection would lead, but he felt certain of one thing. He was no longer alone in the way he had been. Someone had seen him, truly seen him. And in return, he had glimpsed the depth and complexity of her own heart. For Elias, that realization was enough to fill him with hope, curiosity, and a quiet, growing courage. The world seemed larger, more vibrant, and alive with possibility. And somewhere in the distance he knew she was waiting, just as curious, just as eager, and just as human as he was. The days turned into weeks, and the connection between Elias and the tall Apache woman grew stronger with each passing moment. What had started as cautious curiosity had begun to blossom into a friendship unlike anything Elias had ever known. Their meetings became a regular part of his days, sometimes in the forest, sometimes in the fields, and occasionally near the riverbank where wildflowers grew along the edge of the water. Each meeting brought a sense of comfort, a quiet reassurance that there was someone who understood the weight of solitude and the importance of being seen. Elias had begun to notice small changes in himself. His shyness, which had once been a heavy cloak, was slowly loosening. Around her, he could speak a little more freely, express a thought or an observation without fear, and even laugh without embarrassment. He discovered that her presence had a way of drawing out the best in him, encouraging him to step beyond the boundaries he had set for himself over years of quiet living. One morning, Elias arrived at the edge of the forest, carrying a basket of herbs he had collected for the village healer. The sun was still low, casting long shadows across the path. But he paused when he saw her standing by a large oak tree, her figure tall and commanding against the soft light of dawn. She was arranging flowers she had picked from the fields, carefully placing them into bundles. Her hands, though large and strong, moved with a surprising delicacy. "Good morning, Elias," she said, her voice carrying the gentle warmth he had come to cherish. "I was hoping you would come today. I wanted to," he replied softly, feeling the familiar flutter of nervousness in his chest. "I thought I might help you with the herbs." She smiled, a radiant expression that made his heart feel lighter. "I would like that," she said. "It is easier when someone helps, and I enjoy your company." They worked together in quiet harmony, picking herbs and arranging flowers, speaking in soft, deliberate tones. At first, the conversation was simple, about the uses of different plants, the best way to dry herbs, and how to identify them in the wild. But as the morning passed, their words deepened, and they began to share more personal stories. The Apache woman spoke of her childhood, growing up in the village and learning to perform tasks that required strength and endurance. She talked about her family, her parents' expectations, and the times when she had felt out of place among others. "I have always been larger than most people," she said, "and stronger too. It has been a blessing in many ways, but it has also made me feel apart from others. People admire strength, but they do not always understand it." Feeling a profound empathy. He understood what it was like to live quietly, to be unnoticed in a world that often favored the loud and the bold. I know what you mean," he admitted softly. "I am often quiet, and people do not always notice me either. Sometimes I feel invisible." She turned to look at him, her eyes full of understanding. "You are not invisible to me," she said gently. "I see you, Elias. I see the care you put into your work, the thoughtfulness in your actions, and the quiet kindness in your heart." That is more than many people notice in a lifetime.
His chest swelled with a mix of gratitude and humility.
It was rare for anyone to acknowledge him in such a way, and to hear it from her, with such sincerity, felt almost like sunlight breaking through a cloudy sky.
He nodded, speechless for a moment, but inside, a warmth spread through him, a quiet joy he had not felt in years.
Over the next few hours, they continued walking through the forest and the nearby fields, collecting herbs and wildflowers, speaking about small and large things alike. Elias learned about her dreams, simple ones, yet deeply meaningful. She wished to help the village prosper, to teach others about the plants and herbs that could heal and nourish, and to find moments of peace in the quiet of the hills. He, in turn, spoke of his love for the land, his fascination with growing things, and the small joys he found in tending his crops. One afternoon, as the sun began to lower in the sky, casting golden light across the fields, she paused by a small stream and knelt to fill her basket with water. Elias watched her, noting the strength and grace in her movements. "You are remarkable," he said softly, almost to himself. She looked up at him and smiled, a gentle curve of her lips that made his heart race.
Remarkable?
She asked, tilting her head slightly.
Why would you say that? Because you are strong, and yet gentle, he replied.
Breaths, confident yet kind. I have never met anyone like you. She laughed lightly, the sound like wind rustling through the leaves.
Perhaps you have not looked closely enough, she teased, though her eyes were warm. There are many people like me, if one takes the time to see them. But I
am glad you see me as I am. That moment marked a subtle shift in their relationship. There was a trust growing between them, a willingness to share vulnerabilities without fear of judgment.
She began to tell him things she had never shared with anyone else in the village, small worries, fleeting fears, and moments of doubt.
Elias listened without interruption, offering quiet encouragement and gentle understanding. For him, these conversations were both humbling and exhilarating. He had never been trusted in such a way before, and he felt the responsibility to honor that trust with care and sincerity. Days turned into weeks, and their friendship continued to deepen. They met regularly, finding excuses to spend time together, helping with chores, walking in the forest, or simply sitting by the river, speaking softly while the water flowed around them. With each meeting, Elias felt himself growing in confidence, learning to express his thoughts more freely and to enjoy the simple pleasures of companionship. The Apache woman, too, seemed to flourish in his presence. She laughed more easily, shared more openly, and carried herself with a quiet joy that was both inspiring and contagious.
One morning they were walking along a narrow path lined with wildflowers when she stopped suddenly and looked at him with a serious expression.
"Elias," she said softly, "do you ever feel afraid of what others think?" He paused, considering her question. "I am shy, and I worry about being judged or misunderstood. But I feel less afraid when I am with you. You make it easier to be myself."
She nodded thoughtfully. I feel the same way, she said.
People notice my size, my strength, and sometimes I wonder if they see the real me. But with you, I do not have to wonder. I can just be myself. The honesty of her words touched Elias deeply. He realized that their friendship was not only a source of comfort, but also a bridge to personal growth. Through her, he was learning to step beyond the limitations he had placed on himself, to embrace his own voice and presence in the world. And through him, she was discovering that strength and gentleness could coexist, that being different did not mean being alone, and that trust could create a rare and precious bond. They continued walking in silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts, yet aware of the comforting presence of the other. The forest seemed quieter, as if holding its breath for the unfolding connection between them. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the path and painting the sky in hues of pink and gold. Eventually they reached the edge of the village, where the sounds of daily life, children laughing, neighbors calling to one another, the soft clatter of tools, began to fill the air once again.
She turned to him, her eyes bright and thoughtful.
"I am glad we met, Elias," she said softly. "You have made these past weeks special." He nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I feel the same," he replied. "I never imagined someone could understand me the way you do." I am grateful for your friendship," She smiled a gentle, reassuring expression that made him feel both at ease and deeply connected. "And I am grateful for yours," she said. "It is rare to find someone who truly listens, who truly cares." "You have shown me that." As they parted that day, Elias felt a sense of warmth and possibility he had never known. The shy farmer, once content with a solitary life of quiet routines, was discovering the richness of connection, the beauty of shared understanding, and the joy of companionship. The tall Apache woman, who had often felt isolated despite her strength, was learning that trust and friendship could create a safe space, a place where one could be seen and valued for who they truly were. That evening, as he sat in his small home, Elias reflected on the changes that had begun in his life. He realized that the world felt larger, more vibrant, and more full of possibility. He was no longer just a quiet observer. He was a participant, someone capable of connection, empathy, and understanding. And somewhere in the village, walking among the fields and the forest, the tall Apache woman was thinking of him as well, feeling the same sense of hope and growing affection that he did. It was a beginning, he thought, a first step towards something deeper, something meaningful. And although neither of them knew what the future would hold, they understood one thing clearly. They had found in each other a rare and precious bond, one built on trust, honesty, and the quiet beauty of shared solitude. The village was preparing for the annual festival, a time when neighbors, families, and travelers from nearby communities would gather to celebrate the harvest, share stories, and honor traditions. The air was filled with excitement and anticipation. Children ran through the streets, carrying ribbons and small handmade decorations. Women hung garlands of flowers and colorful cloth from the market stalls, while men carried bundles of wood and prepared spaces for dancing and music. The scent of baking bread, roasting meat, and sweet pies drifted through the air, mingling with the earthy aroma of the fields. For Elias, the festival brought both excitement and anxiety. He had attended before, but always as a quiet observer, careful to stay in the background and avoid attention. Now, with the tall Apache woman as a companion, he felt a new sense of courage, but also a deep nervousness. But he was aware that their growing closeness might attract notice, and not all of it would be kind. The villagers were used to seeing them separately. Elias, the quiet, shy farmer, and her, the strong, confident woman who stood out in any crowd. The idea of them together challenged expectations and could invite gossip. On the morning of the festival, Elias set out early to prepare his small home and fields for visitors. He wanted everything to be perfect, yet his thoughts kept drifting to her. He hoped she would come and that they could walk together through the festival without fear or discomfort. When he reached the edge of the forest, he saw her waiting, as if she had sensed he would be there. She held a basket of fresh flowers, and her presence seemed to light the morning sun itself. "Good morning, Elias," she said softly, her smile warm and comforting. "Are you ready for the festival?" He nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. Breaths. "I think so," he said. I hope we can enjoy it, despite what others may think."
She placed a hand lightly on his arm, a gesture of reassurance.
"Do not worry," she said gently. "We will face it together. What others think is not as important as what we know to be true about ourselves." Together they walked toward the village, their steps in quiet harmony. As they approached, Elias could see the first hints of the villagers noticing them. Some turned their heads, whispering quietly to neighbors. Others stared openly, curiosity and surprise evident in their expressions. He felt a flutter of unease in his chest, but when he glanced at her, he saw a calm determination. She walked tall, shoulders back, eyes forward, and with every step, she seemed to radiate strength and confidence. Despite the whispers and curious glances, Elias found himself relaxing. Her presence was a shield, her confidence a guide. People could watch and speculate, but they could not take away the connection that had grown between them. He realized that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to move forward despite it. And as they entered the heart of the festival, Elias felt that courage stirring within him, stronger than ever before. The festival was alive with color, sound, and movement. Children danced in circles, their laughter echoing across the village square. Musicians played flutes and drums, creating rhythms that made people's feet tap and heads sway. Then stalls overflowed with fruits, vegetables, baked goods, and handmade crafts. The tall Apache woman led Elias through the crowd, pointing out familiar faces, introducing him to neighbors, and sharing quiet laughter with him. Yet, not all eyes were friendly. Some villagers whispered more boldly, their tones carrying judgment. "Why is he with her?" one asked. "She is too strong for him." "They do not belong together," another remarked. "He is shy and quiet. She is bold and commanding." "It will not last." Elias heard the words and felt a pang of doubt. He was used to keeping to himself, and the scrutiny of the villagers made him question whether their friendship could survive such attention.
Sensing his unease, she placed a hand on his shoulder once more and leaned close.
"Ignore them," she said softly. "Their words do not define us."
We know the truth of our friendship, and that is what matters. Stand with me, Elias.
"Be yourself, and do not let fear control you." Her words were like a balm to his heart. He drew in a deep breath, straightening his back, and felt a new sense of determination. He would not shrink away. He would not let the fear of judgment undo the bond they had built over weeks of shared time, honesty, and trust. Together they moved through the festival, heads held high, faces calm, and hearts connected. As the day unfolded, they participated in small festival activities. Elias helped with a game for the children, guiding them gently and encouraging their laughter. She joined in a dance demonstration, her strength and grace on display for all to see. People could not help but notice the harmony between them. The quiet patience of Elias paired with the confident, nurturing presence of the Apache woman. Slowly, some of the whispers began to fade, replaced by admiration and appreciation for their unique partnership. During a quiet moment by the river, away from the crowds, she turned to him and smiled. Breaths. "Do you see?" she said softly. "People are beginning to understand." Not everyone, but some are seeing us as we truly are. That is progress. Elias nodded, a gentle smile forming on his lips. "Yes," he said. "And I feel stronger because of you. You have shown me how to stand, even when it is difficult. I am grateful for that."
They spent the rest of the afternoon walking among the festival stalls, sampling foods, and exchanging stories with neighbors.
Each interaction, whether small or significant, seemed to solidify their bond further. Elias began to feel a sense of belonging he had never experienced before. The villagers, too, were slowly coming to see the truth of their friendship, a connection built on respect, trust, and the courage to be oneself. As evening approached, the villagers gathered for the final celebration, a large bonfire near the edge of the fields. The fire cast warm light across smiling faces, creating a sense of unity and shared joy. Music filled the air, and people began to dance in circles around the flames. Elias and the Apache woman joined the group, moving together in rhythm with the music. For the first time, Elias felt fully present, fully alive, and fully confident in his place within the community. In that moment, surrounded by the flickering light of the bonfire, he realized how far he had come. He had faced his fears, embraced his connection with her, and discovered a courage he did not know he possessed. But then she too had faced the whispers, the judgment, and the isolation she had often felt, emerging stronger and more confident in their shared bond.
After the dancing had slowed and the bonfire burned low, they walked together toward the quiet of the hills.
The night air was cool, and the stars twinkled above them like scattered diamonds. They spoke softly about the day, about the people they had encountered, and about the pride they felt in standing together despite the challenges. "You were amazing today," Elias said quietly. I do not know if I could have done it without you."
She smiled, a gentle, proud expression.
"And you were amazing too, Elias," she replied. "You stood tall, even when it was difficult."
Bravery. That is strength. That is courage. That is what matters. For a long moment they walked in silence, the only sounds the whispering wind and the faint call of night birds. Elias realized that their journey together had changed him in ways he could not have imagined. The shy, quiet farmer who had once hidden in the background of life was now a man capable of connection, empathy, and bravery. And the Apache woman who had often felt apart and misunderstood had found in him someone who saw her for who she truly was. They reached a small clearing where the soft glow of moonlight illuminated the landscape. She turned to him and spoke, her voice soft but full of meaning. "Elias, no matter what others think, we have something special. Bows, it is rare to find someone who understands you, who accepts you, who stands with you. Remember that. Always." "Birth." He nodded, feeling a profound sense of gratitude and wonder. "I will," he said softly. I am glad I met you. You have changed my life in ways I cannot fully explain." She smiled, placing her hand gently on his arm, a silent promise of trust, companionship, and shared courage. But in that quiet moment, surrounded by the night and the soft sounds of the village in the distance, Elias understood that together they could face anything: judgment, fear, or doubt. Their bond was stronger than the whispers of the village, stronger than the challenges of life, and stronger than the loneliness they had once known. As they made their way back to the village, Elias felt a sense of peace and confidence he had never known. The festival had tested them, challenged them, and shown them the power of courage, trust, and connection. And though the days ahead would bring new challenges, he knew that together they could face anything, side by side. The days after the festival were calm but filled with a quiet sense of change. The village had witnessed something unusual. The shy farmer Elias walking confidently beside the tall Apache woman side by side, facing judgment with courage and calm. People whispered less, and some even began to smile in approval. The bond they had built was no longer a secret, and the villagers began to understand that strength and kindness could coexist in unexpected ways.
Elias found himself waking each morning with a renewed sense of purpose.
The fields no longer felt like solitary work, but part of a larger rhythm that connected him to life, to the land, and to the people around him. He spent hours tending his crops, collecting herbs, and repairing fences, but now he often shared these moments with her. She would arrive in the early morning carrying baskets of flowers or herbs, sometimes helping with the work, sometimes simply walking alongside him in companionable silence. Their friendship had grown into something deeper, though neither of them rushed to define it. They had discovered trust, understanding, and mutual respect, an unspoken bond that had become a foundation for both of their lives. Each gesture, each shared laugh, each quiet conversation strengthened the connection between them. For Elias, it was as if a new light had been turned on inside him, illuminating parts of himself he had long ignored. And for her, it was a relief to feel seen, accepted, and appreciated for who she truly was. One morning, as the sun rose and painted the fields in warm hues of gold and green, Elias noticed her standing at the edge of his property. She carried a basket of freshly picked herbs and smiled warmly as he approached. "Good morning, Elias," she said softly. "I thought we could work together today." "There is much to do, and I enjoy your company." He nodded, feeling a calm joy spread through him. "I would like that," he said, his voice stronger and steadier than it had been in the past.
Your company makes the work easier and more enjoyable. Together they moved through the fields, collecting herbs, tending crops, and repairing small fences. Their conversations were easy and natural, flowing between practical matters and personal thoughts.
She spoke of her dreams for the village, small ideas for improving the crops, ways to help people understand the plants and herbs that could heal. Elias shared his ideas as well, growing more confident with each word. But he began to see himself not just as a quiet observer, but as a man capable of contributing, of making a difference, and of standing alongside someone he respected and cared for.
As the day wore on, they paused by a stream to rest.
She knelt and cupped her hands to drink the cool water, and Elias followed. The reflection of the sky and trees shimmered on the water's surface, a mirror of the world around them. They sat together, enjoying the quiet, listening to the gentle flow of the stream and the occasional chirp of birds.
You know,
She said after a while, her voice thoughtful, "I never imagined that I would find someone like you. Someone who sees me for who I am, not just what others notice. It is rare, and it is precious." Elias felt his heart swell with emotion. "I feel the same," he replied softly. "I never thought I could connect with anyone in this way. But with you, I feel understood, accepted, and even stronger." She reached out, placing a hand lightly on his arm. "Then let us continue like this," she said gently. "Side by side, facing life together, no matter what comes. We will support each other and we will grow, just as we have already begun." But the seasons began to change, and with them the landscape around the village shifted. The fields grew lush and green, the forests became dense with life, and the river sparkled more vividly under the sun. Elias and the Apache woman continued their routine, sharing work, conversation, and quiet moments. Their companionship became a source of joy not only for themselves but also for the villagers who had grown accustomed to seeing them together. Slowly, respect and admiration replaced whispers of doubt. Children would wave at them as they walked through the village, and neighbors would smile and nod in approval. One afternoon they decided to take a long walk through the hills, venturing farther than they had ever gone together. The path was narrow, winding through groves of trees and open meadows dotted with wildflowers. The sun was warm on their faces, and the breeze carried the sweet scent of blooming plants. They walked side by side, speaking softly about the future, about the dreams they held, and about the possibilities that awaited them beyond the boundaries of the village. "Bess, you know," she said after a while, "I used to think that being strong and different meant being alone, that no one would ever truly understand me." Elias looked at her, his eyes filled with empathy. "I used to think the same," he said. "I thought my quiet nature and shyness would keep me apart from the world, but now I see that being different is not a weakness. It is who we are, and the right people will see us for that." She smiled, a soft, warm expression that lit up her face. "And I am glad that you are one of those people," she said. "You have given me something I never expected: trust, friendship, and hope. You have shown me that I am not alone."
He reached out, taking her hand in his. It was a simple gesture, but it carried a depth of meaning that words could not capture.
They walked on, their hands intertwined, feeling the strength and comfort of their bond. There was no rush, no urgency, only the quiet assurance that they were moving forward together, supporting one another in every step. Back in the village, life continued as before, but with subtle differences. People noticed the way Elias moved with confidence, the way he spoke with assurance, and the way he interacted with the Apache woman. They began to see him not just as a shy farmer, but as a man capable of courage, kindness, and emotional strength. She, too, was seen not only as a strong and commanding figure, but also as someone capable of tenderness, understanding, and deep connection. Their friendship became a source of inspiration for others in the village. People began to understand that differences could be strengths, that courage could take many forms, and that connection and empathy were gifts to be cherished. Children learned from their example, observing the respect, trust, and care that defined their relationship. Neighbors began to approach them with openness, seeking advice, sharing stories, and even offering help in small ways. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and gold, Elias and the Apache woman sat together on a small hill overlooking the village. The wind was gentle, carrying the scent of wildflowers and freshly turned soil. They spoke softly about the past months, reflecting on how far they had come and how much they had grown.
I never imagined life could be like this, Elias said quietly.
I never thought I could feel this connection with someone, the sense of purpose and joy. She turned to him, her eyes full of warmth. Neither did I, she replied, but we have found each other, and that has changed everything. We have built something rare and beautiful, something that will last. For a long while they simply sat together, watching the sky darken and the first stars appear. The quiet was comforting, a shared space where words were not always necessary. Elias felt a sense of peace he had never known, a sense that life, with all its challenges, could also bring joy, love, and fulfillment. As night fully settled over the village, they walked back to their homes, side by side, hands still gently clasped. There was a promise in their steps, a sense of continuity and hope that would carry them through the days and seasons to come. They knew that life would continue to bring challenges, but they also knew that together they could face anything. Their bond was a foundation of trust, understanding, and shared strength, and it would guide them through whatever lay ahead. In the following months, their companionship deepened further. They worked together on the fields, shared meals with neighbors, and spent quiet evenings talking under the stars. Each day brought new experiences, laughter, and moments of reflection. Elias found himself growing more confident, not just in the village, but in his own heart and mind. The Apache woman found joy in knowing that she could be herself fully, without fear of judgment or misunderstanding. Their story became known throughout the village, not as gossip, but as a tale of courage, trust, and the power of genuine connection. People admired them, not for appearances, but for the honesty and depth of their friendship. Children learned to respect differences, neighbors learned to embrace understanding, and the village as a whole grew closer, inspired by the example set by the shy farmer and the tall Apache woman. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills and painted the fields in soft golden light, Elias and the Apache woman stood together, looking out over the land they both loved. She smiled, her eyes reflecting the morning glow. We have come far, she said softly, and yet, I feel this is only the beginning. Elias nodded, feeling a deep sense of hope and certainty.
Yes, he said. Together, we can face anything.
And I know that life will be brighter, fuller, and richer with you by my side. They walked back toward the village, their steps steady, their hearts light, and their bond unbreakable. The shy farmer had found courage, connection, and purpose. The Apache woman had found understanding, friendship, and acceptance. And together they embraced a life full of hope, joy, and the promise of new beginnings.